I can't blame Julio Teheran. The guy has been so good. Gave up 4 bombs against the New York Mets, and the Mets broke loose, beat the Brewers 7-2. We'll talk about that. Woodruff on the mend. That is great news. But the offense struggles again. All that more coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Oh, the Brewers, the split in New York so far against the Mets. The Mets have beat the Brewers for a first time this year, 7-2. Teheran, he's been so good for these guys. Gives up 4 home runs, cruised through the first 3 innings, and then fell off. But I'm going to tell you, I'm not blaming him whatsoever. We're going to talk about that coming up here in a little bit. Good to have you along. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers and the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thanks for joining us. Download us on your various platforms, Google, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. We're all on all of them. Probably everyone out there. You can download Locked On Brewers. We're the number 1 Brewer podcast on the internet for a reason, because of you, the great fans out there, the great Brewer fans. Locked On Brewers. Follow us on YouTube as well. Hit the search button on YouTube. Put in Locked On Brewers, then you'll see that subscribe button there. Once you load the videos, subscribe, like it, alert you every time we drop an episode. And hit your alert button on your platform as well, your audio version of the podcast, because we'd like to hear from you and you to hear our show, our half-hour show every day right here on Locked On Brewers. Great to have you along. Chuck Freeman is my name. Morning sports anchor at 1310 WIBA in Madison. Longtime sports talk show host. Been covering the Brewers for over 40 years for various radio stations. Sports talk show host. Over 40 years as the AP radio correspondent covering the professional sports teams in Wisconsin with the Milwaukee Brewers. Follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Trust me, I read all your tweets. We're going to get to some of them coming up here a little bit later on in the show. And, of course, on YouTube, there's a comment section there below the video. I read those comments religiously every day. When I get up in the morning, I check them out. I read what you guys have to say, because feedback from you guys is important, because we're all in this together. We are all a part of Brewer Nation and getting together here on Locked On Brewers. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Julio Teheran, I mean, what can you say? The guy had pitched 6 terrific outings. Could be 6-0 right now. Instead, he's 2-3. And yeah, he went 9 up, 9 down to start the game, but the Brewers weren't scoring. Brewers didn't score in this game until the 8th inning. So, yeah, Teheran went on to give up 4 home runs, but they weren't going to score for him anyway. And at some point, when you're the pitcher out there and you're dealing like he was, and he has been, and he's been great for the Brewers. Julio the Great, not the same pitcher he was as an all-star with the Braves, but the sinker, some nasty stuff, working the corners. But the Mets, yeah, they did hit him for 4 home runs. But come on, man. At some point, I just lose my mind when the Brewers go on these all too often streaks of not scoring runs. Yeah, we all get frustrated by it, but here it was again. Stranding bases loaded, double play balls. What is Blake Perkins doing in the leadoff spot? 0 for 5 and 3 Ks. You get picked off 2 days in a row. The reward? You're batting leadoff. I don't get it. But they could not solve a lefty. And I said yesterday, David Peterson, the left-hander for the Mets, came in with horrendous numbers. 1-6, an ERA of over 8. Had been so bad. They sent him down. He's been down at AAA for a little over a month. The Mets needed another starter, and he comes up and throws 6 shutout innings. I kind of predicted it on a podcast yesterday, because we've seen that happen with the Milwaukee Brewers before, where some guy comes up, gets called from AAA, some guy who's been having an absolutely brutal year, and the Brewers make him look like Sandy Koufax. And they did with David Peterson tonight. Brewers scored 2 late runs, but not before Peterson did his damage. The Brewers are 10-15 versus left-handed starters. That number's got to be like 10-27. When I saw that stat tonight, that the Brewers are 10-15 versus lefty, I was like, huh? Ain't no way they're only 10-15 versus lefties. The Freeman eye test says it's a lot worse than that. But they couldn't get any offense going. So this one, yeah, Teheran gave up 7 runs and was not good. But I want to blame the offense again. At some point, when you're a starting pitcher and you go out there and you work inning after inning and after inning and you're mowing them down and you're not getting the offense behind you, I mean, eventually you're going to break down, aren't you? Going out there, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then, his offense gets up, as feeble as this Brewer offense is, and doesn't produce. Yeah. So I'm not putting anything on Julio Teheran. He gave the 4 home runs, but man, he's been so good for these guys. Now, I will say, I hope this isn't the negative part of me says, I hope this is not the beginning of the end for Teheran, who now has bounced around, but has looked fantastic. I'm going to say this is just a bad start. And maybe the Mets did a little videotape homework, and hopefully that doesn't lead to bad things for Teheran. But the Mets jumped on him tonight a couple of times through the order, and they were able to beat Teheran and even up this series. The Brewers now 41-38. The Reds were in a rain delay with Baltimore. It was like a 17-hour rain delay. They were up 2-1 on the Orioles. And when I went to record this video, it was still 2-1 in the 7th. That's a long rain delay at Camden Yards. Again, one more reason why is how great it is that we have the roof at AmFam Field. All right, when we come back, we'll tell you about Woodruff. We'll get to your tweets and tell you about Wednesday's Game 3 between the Brewers and Mets. All that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers and the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Brewers and Mets coming up on Wednesday night. The 3rd game of this 4-game series, 6:10. Catch the Brewers and Mets on SiriusXM, the SXM app. Hit Brewers, search Brewers, and they will take you right to the app. Take you right to the broadcast, all 162 of Brewers baseball and the home team broadcast on SiriusXM and the SXM app. Search Brewers. And all you everydayers out there, thank you very much. Following us on Twitter. Follow me, Chuck Freeman. Thank you very much, Freeman, Freimund. The various platforms that we download this video on. Well, we download it on YouTube, but we have the audio on various platforms: Google, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Search Locked On Brewers. We're there. We're on every one of them. Thank you very much, you everydayers who stick with us. And I noticed that we get more people when the Brewers win. The traffic picks up on Locked On Brewers. I had to take a drink. We got smoky air up in Wisconsin. Those Canadian wildfires are just making life miserable for some people. Making me thirsty. But those various platforms out there, we're on all of them, continue to be, and thank you for following us here on Locked On Brewers. This show is brought to you in part by Gametime. I tell you, if you're going to buy tickets, and the Brewers are home next Monday against the Cubs in a series, I believe it's a 4-game series starting with the Cubs on Monday, on July 3rd. Go to Gametime. There's tickets on there. You get great deals. You get flash deals. You'll get tickets right up until right before game time. Flash deals, last minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, concerts, all the sporting events, theater. They're all on Gametime, and they got this special thing where you can click on your seat, and it'll show the image. It'll show you how far you are away from the stage, how far you are away from the court or the playing field. It's all on this Gametime app. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and important here, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last bit of tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're going to get to some positive news on Brandon Woodruff. That's next here on Locked On Brewers. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Your host, Chuck Freeman. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here after a loss 7-2 in New York. Julio Teheran gives up 4 runs, and the offense, of course, doesn't give him any offensive support. Win, lose, or tie. They just don't. Nobody ever supports the poor Julio Teheran, who goes out there and works his butt off. Gave up 4 dingers. I'm not making an excuse for that, but let's score some runs behind this guy. And tonight he broke down. We're going to get to your tweets coming up here in a little bit, see what you had to say. Brandon Woodruff threw another bullpen session, 25 pitches. He's going to have one more coming up. And then after that, they're going to make it. They don't know when he's going to pitch again. In a simulated game, make rehab starts. TBA, to be announced for Brandon Woodruff. But he was talking in the dugout today before the game. Seems very positive. Thinks he's behind the injury. The injury's behind him. And it's time to move forward and get strong and build up that endurance once again, because he hasn't pitched since early April. He was supposed to be back late June. Remember when that news came out? They said late June. Still not back, but he says he's by the injury. That is great news. That is great news. Now we can only hope that the offense can return. Ashby had a bullpen session. Looks like after the All-Star break, he's going to be doing some his rehab assignment. So that's good. But pitching is not the problem as on this team. Offense. I had an idea. I was on my friend, the Bill Michaels show, statewide in throughout Wisconsin. And he asked me today about trading Corbin Burnes, which is a hot topic among Brewers fans. Should you trade Corbin Burnes? Are they going to re-sign him? Are they going to give him an extension? What are they going to do? Is he mad because they didn't get an extension? Or lost his arbitration? Are they going to trade Corbin Burnes? I don't think they're going to. I just don't think they're going to trade him, okay? Because the Brewers are going to be in the race. They do not want to do what they did last year with Josh Hader, where they were in a race, traded him, and the team fell apart. Corbin Burnes, in his beautiful new haircut, they are not going to trade. I don't believe so. But would you trade him to get a bat or 3? Because if you do trade him, and I could never understand if you're a contender, the old school way is if you're a contender, you would never trade pitching. It's an arms race. Always was an arms race. Who could stack up the most arms? The Brewers have the arms. The Brewers have playoff contending arms in that rotation. They could use another bullpen guy, but they do not have nowhere near a lineup that is a playoff contender. So would you do this? Would you trade one of those pieces in your pitching, on your pitching staff, for a bat or 2? Would you trade Corbin Burnes? Now, I don't think his stock is quite as high as it was a couple of months ago. I'm sure it's come down a little bit. Or if you could trade Miley to get a bat. Miley pitches tomorrow or Wednesday, depending on when you hear this broadcast, but he pitches Wednesday. Would you think of trading somebody in that rotation? Because the Brewers, when they go to the postseason, their history is they don't get enough runs. The pitching might be there, but not scoring enough. I'd almost have to think about that, depending on the bat. I know you want to have pitching, okay? And you want to throw some slouch out there, but with some of these guys, the Brewers are going to have several qualified starters, okay? Colin Ray is probably going to get, when these guys get healthy, Colin Ray, who just pitched in the 7th inning, he's going to get sent down to the minors. Okay. What happens when Woodruff is active? All right. What happens when Ashby comes back? Because they got money invested in Ashby. Ashby ain't working on the bullpen. Ashby's going to be in that starting rotation. So maybe you do have an extra guy you could trade, because they're going to have a surplus of arms in that starting rotation. Maybe you trade for Bet. But as I told Bill, and I've been telling you guys here on this podcast, the Brewers need more than just one at bat, just more than one bat. I was still ticked off. Why on earth was Blake Perkins in the leadoff spot after yesterday? Why did that happen? I don't get it. All right, let's get to some of your tweets. Chuck Freeman, DM me if you want to keep it private, or if you want to just put it out there, just at me, at Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Wade says, at least Perkins did not get picked off. Little smiley face, says Wade. SB says, why would Counsell bat Yelich third? Was doing so good at leadoff, and then he moves him, Perkins, to the leadoff spot, went 0 for 5 and 3 Ks. Enough of this on analytics BS. Yeah, I agree. I think that's with the lefty on the hill. With the lefty on the hill, they always drop Counsell down in the order. Yelich. Counsell also always drops Yelich down in the order. Yeah, the old lefty-righty thing. How'd that work with Perkins tonight? 0 for 5 and 3 Ks. You got it. Ian says, I really hope trying to steal a base down 7 was Weimer's decision, because it was Counsell's. It was the dumbest move ever. They never play small ball down 1 or 2. Yeah, I thought it was odd. They're down in that game and Weimer stealing the base. You need 7. You don't need 1. Could never understand that. My boy's Little League team, I think the kid went on his own. He tried down a handful of runs. He was stealing second base. Almost got thrown out. I was like, what? Dr. Granajan says, just a matter of time before Teheran got rocked. Brewers can't hit pitchers with ERAs of 7. Well, the Brewers couldn't hit Peterson tonight. Yeah, he had an ERA of 8. Matter of time before Teheran I can see that. Yeah. I mean, because he had been so good. He had been solid out there. The 6 terrific outings. He was due for a bad one. Maybe not 4 home runs. I think it was the first time since 2016 where Teheran gave up 4 home runs in a game. Dan says, Chuck, this team would lose to it. Now we get silly here. Chuck, this team would lose to a single A ball minor league team if that pitcher threw left-handed, and it starts in the first inning. 2 straight walks, and then Miller swings at the first pitch. Pathetic. Well, Miller usually has pretty good at-bats. Yeah. 2 walks, Miller swinging at the first pitch. They need to trade him too. Talking about Urias, you're not going to get much for Urias at this point. What contending team is going to want a 150 hitter? Flashing leather out there defensively. Yes, he's getting the job done defensively. Offensively, Woody says this team is so inept on offense, disgusting. Hegg says, I don't get why Urias is constantly in the upper to middle part of the lineup. Move him down. He's been beyond atrocious since coming back. Yeah, he is. Yeah, why is Urias always in the heart of the order? Is it because the rest of this team is just so bad offensively that's what we got to settle for? Urias right in the middle of the order? Move Owen down says, this team seriously hits into more double plays than any team in history. It sure seems like it. That has to be on the hitting coaches for failing to teach the approach that avoids hitting ground balls in those situations. Something. But yeah, it always seems like, man, a couple guys on, even with walks, and there we go. Around the horn double play. Mark says, please, can someone get a hit with runners on base? Way past the point of ridiculous. This has been a problem. I'm losing my mind 3 months into this. I was in May. Okay, in May. And we're only at 81 games or whatever it is right now. How many games? 80 games. And this is going to be like this all season long. Lack of clutch hitting, stranding small cities on the base paths. That's going to be a constant. That's going to be, this far into the season, it's just not getting any better, guys. It isn't. You're going to have once in a while, you're going to bust loose for 6 or 7 runs. You're going to hear somebody out of the locker room say, oh boy, this team can hit. We're just going through a slump right now, but we can hit with the best of them. You can't. Not with some of these batting averages on your team. Yes, batting averages. Willie Adames 204. Urias, I gave him too much credit. He's 148. Tellez, they benched him tonight. He came in later on. But he's not been hitting against playing against lefties. 218. Brian Anderson made a nice defensive play again tonight, batting 220. Joey Weimer, I'm going to cut him some slack, 215. Monasterio, Andrew, 233. He had that one stretch for a couple of games where he was doing well. And same with Weimer hit the 2-run homer last night. But, last night's game, 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Just very, very bad. All right. We'll come back and we'll talk about Wednesday's game against the New York Mets, as it's the third game of the 4-game series. We'll talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Your host, Chuck Freeman. Brewers and Mets coming up on Wednesday night, 6:10, another night game in New York. Catch every pitch of the Brewers' hometown broadcast, Sirius XM, the SXM app. Search Brewers. And thank you all you everydayers out there for making Locked On Brewers your first listen to every day right here. Google, Spotify, Apple, the various platforms, also on YouTube. Some of you guys, from what I understand, watch it together at night. Watch YouTube, put us up on your smart TV. That's great. I appreciate that. If you could stand me on a 60-inch screen TV, that's okay. But yes, I appreciate all that. And of course, you can always go to your device as well in your house, your device, the one that begins with an A. I know I use that. I just say, go to Locked On Brewers, and voila, it pops up. Tells you the latest edition and so on. 36-year-old Wade Miley, little cramping his last time out, but not an issue. He's back pitching. He was TBA for a little bit. I think they were just making sure, but 11 scoreless innings since coming off the injured list. 5-2 record, a 2.91 ERA for Wade Miley. Kodai Senja is pitching. He has not been good. Japanese league star. Okay. Gives up a lot of home runs. 9 home runs in 72 innings. He's pitching better as of late. 6-5, an ERA of 3.52. That's not so bad. But pitching better as he's getting more big league experience. And he's a right-handed pitcher going against Wade Miley coming up on Wednesday night. That lineup is always different for the Milwaukee Brewers, man. Different, ever-changing. Council just trying to find some magic. And by the way, did you hear the report in the New York Daily News that David Stearns is going to get a look at from the New York Mets as their GM? I would think if David Stearns wants that job is his. He left the Brewers for some reason. Okay. He left the Brewers for some reason. Might have been in his contract that he had to sit out a year or something. He's still in that consultant's role. Something that he had to sit out a year before he could take his next job. I don't know what it was, but that's still a bizarre move that he left this team. He's going to be a GM next year. And again, the New York Daily News is reporting that Stearns is going to be a candidate for that GM job in New York. We'll see if he hires Craig Counsell, because contract is up for Craig. Well, the Brewers lost 7-2. Teheran was bad. Offensive support was worse. Okay. It's worse because it's been a chronic problem that doesn't seem to go away. Let's try to do better. You know Wade Miley's going to go out and pitch his heart out on Wednesday afternoon. That you know. He's been great. A back page pickup for the Milwaukee Brewers in the offseason. Really, it was. Okay. I don't think there was a lot of expectations there. He's bounced back after his turn on the injured list. And, he's going to give him a good quality start. I don't know it for a fact, but I mean, he's Wade Miley and he's great in a Brewers uniform. And we know that. It's going to do it for me. We'll talk to you after the game tomorrow night, Brewers and Mets. I'm Chuck Freeman on Locked On Brewers on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. So long, everybody.